All right. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Ari, how you doing?
Hello there. How are you?
Chat, let us know if you can hear us okay. My name has been Sadegapur. Most of you online know me as Nahamsek. I am joined today by Grandpa Ari, aka ARL Rose. For those
Thank
of you
you.
who don't know, we call him Grandpa Ari on this show. And if you can start a Grandpa Ari chain in the chat, I would really appreciate it.
Um, Thank you, Ben, very much for
And if
that.
you're watching this on YouTube, by the way, Grandpa Ari chain in the comments. What's
Okay,
up, Ori? What's
that's
new, man? What's our announcement for today?
my back hurts a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not that much of a grandpa. Doing well. Doing the final episode of season 2, right?
This is our final episode of season 2, and we may or may not, actually, we are going to have some giveaways at the end of the show.
Nice.
Our producer in the chat is telling us that we will have some giveaways. I think 3 to 5. We're not sure how many, but we'll have those up in a bit at the end of the show. So if you want to win some HackerOne goodies, stick around at the end of the interview. Once we say goodbye to our guests, we will do our giveaway. All right, Ari, who are our guests?
Oh, we do have some amazing guests today. Some of the best hackers out there, probably. Rhino Raider and CLC, which definitely has different Twitter handles. I will be sharing that soon.
So let's put that on the stream. So if you want to follow them, Justin's Runinator is twitter.com/Runinator, and then Sam WCYO if you want to follow them. Should we bring them on, Ari? Do you think chat's ready?
I think we should. Yes.
All right, we should. All right, let's bring on let's welcome Justin and Sam to the stream. How you doing, guys?
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Hello.
How's it going, guys?
Pretty good. Thanks for having us on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for joining us. Before we get started, let's do a round of intros. Let's start with telling us about who you are, what do you do, and how long you have been doing it for. Let's start with you, Justin.
Sure. Yeah, like you said, I'm Justin Gardner. Hacker handle is Rhino I am actually a full-time bug bounty hunter currently, and I've been doing that for about 2 years. I just moved back from Japan to the United States, and while I was over there, I was able to do bug bounties the whole time, and that supported me while I was over there, just kind of having an awesome experience. So I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, I specialize in web applications, as that's a lot of what we look at mostly when we're doing bug bounty scopes. But I've also been kind of pivoting a little bit into the Ethereum space, smart contracts, auditing, that sort of thing. And yeah, would love to move a little bit deeper into binary exploitation or something like that. But that's going to be a couple years down the line, probably.
Very cool. Very awesome. Sam, what about you, man?
Yes, I used to be a full-time bug bounty hunter. I was a bug bounty hunter, I think, for maybe like 4 or 5 years, like on and off. So I started maybe, I don't know, 2017 maybe. I'm not too sure, but right now I started a company called Palisade about like a year ago, and we do kind of we work with kind of crypto companies doing web app auditing, and that's kind of mainly what I did in bug bounty, is like a lot of web app sec, like Justin said. We actually worked a lot together, me and Rhino Raider. We found some really cool bugs, so yeah, very happy to be talking with you guys.
Awesome. If you want to know what year it was, I think it was 27. You were right. It was 2017 because I remember seeing you. You were very young. You came to H1702. The second one when we did H1702, you showed up to it, and you were very, very young. So it was 2017 is when at least when I remember of you joining us.
Yeah, I think I had to email Martin Mikos to let me come in because he was didn't know me too well. So I wrote him a long email. I was like, "Can I please go?" But yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you made it. Ari, waiting on you, bud.
Are you waiting on me? I'm just chatting here in the chat. Like, look at this. Scotty just said, I suggested a program. He got bodied bugs. I was like, that's
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you, man. That's awesome.
Dude, that rocks.
So sorry, what we were talking about? Who are you? what I'm doing here? I have amnesia and Grandpa, right? No, again, stop that. So, what are we doing? Really? Should I ask some questions?
Yes, let's get into it.
Are we already starting?
We're already starting.
So we already got some introductions. I also checked in the chat there some good comments or your write-ups Sam, Apple hacker, some stuff. I will share the resources right there. But let us know first, how do you get into hacking? Let's start with you, Sam.
Yeah, so I used to play like a ton of video games, and I think like eventually I found myself there was like a hacker on one of the servers I played on, and I was really curious like how they were doing it. So I kind of like contacted them because I didn't really believe them at first that they were like hacking the server, and then they were like, "Well, no, we actually are," and they like brought me into a community, and so it's just like there's this really small community of like game hackers, and eventually we found like a HackerOne program, and kind of as like a joke, someone posted a link to a HackerOne program. They're like, first one to find a valid vulnerability gets like all the kudos or respect from everybody. So I was like, okay. And I think after like a week, everybody gave up, but I was still like digging at it. And like 2 or 3 weeks later, I finally found a vulnerability. And when I got paid out, I think I was working at like Dairy Queen, which is like an American fast food company. And I really wasn't having the best time. So I was like, if this can get me like $400, and I can do this maybe once every 2 weeks, I'll start doing it. So like in high school, I started doing security a lot more, and I got to work with like kind of some like really cool people. I worked really a lot with like Dog EG early, and I worked with like recently like Brett Bierhaus, Zayat, and a lot of really, really cool people who kind of showed me around a little bit initially, but that's kind of my start.
And how old were you at the time?
I think I was like 16 or 17, 2017, so probably 17. But before that, I'd done like a little bit of, like security stuff and like app development, but that was kind of my start for actual bug bounty hunting.
That's cool. Very young.
Awesome. Yeah.
What about you, Justin?
Well, we can't hear you.
Oh, we cannot hear you.
You did something to your. Maybe you have to go to your settings. I'm not
right?
sure. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think
Can
right
you hear
there.
me now? Or does
Yes,
it
we can
sound
hear you.
super weird?
No, we can hear you.
Okay,
We
cool. I missed the question because I did have some audio
Oh,
issues.
yeah.
What was it?
So don't worry. How you started in the whole cybersecurity infosec?
Oh yeah, it was actually, Sam mentioned Doggy G. It's kind of funny. He's kind of a part of both of our origin stories because I was just kind of well. First of all, I guess I started hacking when I was like 13 to 15. And during that period, it wasn't, I wasn't really going about it the right way. So I stopped hacking when I was 15, and I said, all right, I'm gonna spend some time, learning programming and learning some of the other aspects of computer science. So I did that until I got to college, and then when I was in college, I started the cybersecurity club at our college, and so I was just holding a lab one day, in our lab, and we were, I think we were looking at Metasploitable or something like that. And then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, Doggy G appears just randomly, like, and he just like busts in the door of our lab, and he's like, "Yo, dude, have you like tried the shadow broker exploits on these lab computers?" And I was like, "Who are you?" And I was like in the middle of teaching a lab, and I apparently my co-president had scheduled for him to come and didn't tell me, so it was just kind of a funny story. And so he came in there that day and he started sharing with us about bug bounty and stuff like that. And yeah, dude, that moment changed my life. It really did. And from there on out, I was like, man, this is so cool. So I started reading every piece of material I could get my hands on. And I remember the day I found my first bug, a subdomain takeover with Heroku.
Nice.
On Yahoo, and it paid out a nice 4-figure bounty, and I used it on my honeymoon. So that's my little origin story there. It's all thanks to Doggy G.
So you just mentioned you went to school, and did you go to school for computer science? Was it for infosec?
Yeah. So at the time, my university didn't have a cybersecurity focus or like a cybersecurity degree. So I just went for normal computer science. And then, once I was there, I just kind of bugged the dean and I bugged my professors and about, starting something cybersecurity related. So eventually they got me some money to put together a lab for us to do cybersecurity stuff on. So we got like an old server rack, and I put Metasploitable on it, and we kind of set up a whole little like environment for the cybersecurity club. And so it was cool. I will say there isn't a lot of knowledge that I had from that experience that I use on a day-to-day basis, I think.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a strong background in computing, if you haven't been doing this since you were young, then I think that's a good way to catch up on the basics and, know your way around basic programming and basic computing.
What about you, Sam? Did you go to school or college for computer science, or you have a background in going to formal education for computing?
Yes, I tried to go to school for cybersecurity, but I think I ended up taking like world geography, English too, because the way the American like college system is set up. But I went to I had my focus in computer security. I went there for about 2 semesters, but luckily I like kind of ran into people at my school who actually ran the computer security club. So I got to meet everybody, and they told me that even if I wasn't a student, I could still go to the club. And I really tried to talk to as many people as I could, and I decided just like kind of like stop going to classes. I think like 2 semesters in, but I kept going to that club, and I was involved with a security club. I think maybe 3 years after I left school.
Nice.
But I met a lot of really great people. But yeah, there was a lot of we did like a lot of CTFs and stuff. So I think like Reiner said, there's maybe like not a lot of stuff that we use on like a day-to-day basis, but I think there's like a good foundation for kind of figuring that stuff out. But yeah,
That's great. Yeah, I will say that there's a lot of people in the chat in the community that they are making the same question, like, should I go into the university and get a career about infosec? I think the world, my country is one of those, but the world as a whole needs to do something better in terms of education. Universities, we need real hacking stuff, right? Not just infosec.
Hogwarts, but for hacking.
Yeah, we need better education. So
before you jump in the next question, hold on. Before you jump in the question, if you're watching this, if you're interested in security certifications, last week we did an interview with Bushra, one of our HackerOne employees. She's very, very good with a lot of offensive security certificates. And we also had John Hammond, who's a poster child of security certificates, who's gone every single one of them that's out there. So if you want to watch them, they'll be on YouTube. It should be on our Twitch channel. Go check them out. Just so want to make sure I put that in there. If you're watching it on YouTube, then go to our channel and watch it live. Back to you, Ari.
So yeah, thank you for that. That's very useful. Let's get started in the actual topic. We said we're going to ask some cool question about picking programs. So we're interested in hearing that from you. You're both, I'll say, experts in the matter. So let us know, what are your favorite programs to hack on? And let's try to make sure we are not disclosing any private programs we cannot mention. Let's maybe try to focus on the public ones, but let us know, what are your favorite ones and the ones you actually hack on. Let's start with Sam. I'm normally pretty terrible at that.
Oh, you're totally fine. Yeah, so when I first started doing bug bounty, I think I hacked on Yahoo like full time, just Yahoo for like 3 years straight, and that was like really, really interesting because it's like, at a certain point you're familiar with stuff, you kind of understand what they do, and like kind of, and you're able to kind of pull that together and like find some cool bugs with that. But I think like kind of recently, maybe in like kind of the last 2 years of doing bug bounty stuff, I switched to kind of a different way to pick targets. And I started working and seeing like a lot of technologies that were used everywhere. For instance, I saw like a lot of these JavaScript frameworks, and I saw like a lot of these like different sort of content management systems which were used to build the website. And instead of kind of like picking a target, I was more focused on like the actual deployment. And then I kind of like use that search for that deployment to try to find, from like a wider recon perspective, like, okay, this vendor uses this and I'm kind of familiar with this, so I'm gonna, go to their bug bounty program and see if I can't find any vulnerabilities. And that's kind of let me, I've had a lot of freedom doing kind of consulting, like side work, where instead of having like a full-time bug bounty stuff, which is honestly, I think I have a lot of respect for full-time bug bounty hunters. I think it is like kind of a grind. You can have a month where you don't find anything and a month where you find like 20, crits or whatever. But I think that like having a little bit of freedom kind of helped me take a step back and like start doing an approach where it was like more like wider recon, trying to find like targets that I wanted to hack on versus like this program pays the most and I'm really, doing some sort of like time, like a trade-off, trying to find the best value. So yeah, just having a lot more fun with it, I guess.
It's pretty cool. What about you, Justin?
Yeah, I switched my mic. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, We can hear you.
Okay, cool. Nice. Cool. I bumped it, of course, as soon as we started.
okay.
But yeah, no. So I guess top programs, right? Is that was the question?
Yeah.
Ari?
What are the top 3 programs
Yeah.
that are not private programs? Keep that in mind.
So I looked at my not private program top 3, and I was actually really excited to be able to talk about one of them, or at least 2 of them, because one of them just went public, and that's Instacart. I have had a really awesome experience with the Instacart team. They just really responsive, really, I think we'll probably talk a little bit later about, what kind of makes up a great program in our perspective. But one of the big things for me is, as a full-time bounty hunter, is responsiveness and communication. Those are some really big pieces. And Instacart really nails that. So I'm not going to say they're an easy target. They're not an easy target. So definitely but if you want to find a program that's going to treat you right, they're really a good place to look. Another program that looks really similar to that is SEMrush. I've had a really awesome time communicating with the team at SEMrush, and they are very fast to respond to tickets. So them, and then the last one I wanted to call out was PayPal, because they've got some ridiculous bounties. So those are the top 3 that I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, and sorry I don't mean to cut you guys off really quick, but when I was talking, I was trying to figure out whether or not programs were public or private.
Yeah.
But, I was going to say, yeah, Uber, Crypto.com, Robinhood, and then also PayPal. I think those are like really, really great programs. So
you've had some experience with Crypto.com then, Sam.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so
Oh, no, but wait.
We are interviewing here. This is our job.
Hold on. This is a conversation here, guys.
No, and you host here.
I'll have to hear it. Yeah. Tell us about Crypto.com. It seems like
that's a good question.
Yeah. So I honestly picked that target because, me and my buddies were watching UFC, and we're like, Crypto.com, that's literally everywhere. You turn on the TV, it's like Crypto.com. So you have to, I had to hack them for the clout. I had to be a Crypto.com hacker. But their team is really fantastic. I found a vulnerability in a third-party service, which basically let me take over a bunch of their subdomains. And it was kind of a misconfiguration on their part and kind of a misconfiguration in the third party. But they were really, really responsive. They fixed them. They asked me kind of how I did it, and they paid a bounty for it. So I was really kind of grateful for that. But yeah, really fun program.
It seems like this is Justin's stream now, according to chat.
I'm sorry, guys.
Yo,
I'm
you're
sorry.
next,
I hijacked it. No, that was cool though. I appreciate that.
No, it
Sam,
was it was very natural. I love that.
Yeah. Well, we both have a little bit of interest in the Web 2 plus Web 3 crypto security space. So it's cool to hear from him about that. So
do you guys remember what your first bug bounty program was? There's something that came in the chat. And how did you find the first bug bounty program? Let's start off with you, Justin.
Yeah, so my first one was Yahoo, and that's largely influenced by Doggy G. I was talking to him, and he was saying yeah, look at all these bugs I'm finding, and he was kind of explaining to me. So I actually created a reconnaissance tool and monitored subdomains, and I noticed one of their acquisitions had a Heroku takeover pop up. So I snagged that, and that was my first. And the cool thing about that too is it with those sort of takeovers, you can read HTTP only cookies. So if those authentication cookies are scoped to the wildcard domain, then you get session takeover in those sort of situations. So those sort of subdomain takeovers pay really well because they result in account takeover essentially. So that was a cool one.
Sam, what about you?
Mine was a lot more boring. The first program I hacked on was Pornhub, and that's because it's like the 16-year-olds all trying to find something to do. So I found a cross-site scripting vulnerability. Initially, it was closed as a duplicate, but I checked the duplicate report, and I was I emailed them. I'm like, oh, I actually don't think this is a duplicate, and the team kind of sided with me. So that's kind of the first bounty I got. So
that's
great,
cool.
awesome.
You say it wasn't that fun? Maybe it was fun. I don't know.
Depends on how you look at it.
Depending.
So you both kind of mentioned programs you liked. Uber, PayPal, Crypto.com, Instacart. So a few that you guys named. Yahoo was something that you both had in common. What are the top 3 things you look at when it comes down to selecting a bug bounty program to hack on? Sam, let's kick it off with you.
Yeah, I think one thing is just kind of it's kind of, this one's kind of more broad, but your relationship and understanding of the team.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you're able to get in contact with people to clarify things, or if the team is like, more understanding on reports, I think it's a really great thing. So that's like kind of the first thing, is just the relationship you have with the team. The second thing is obviously like payment, right? Like if they have a max bounty of like 4K or something like that, or 4 or 5K, I think it's like a good program to look at for a little bit, to kind of sweep the surface, see if you miss anything. But I think everybody's looking for like a consistent program where if you find a really crazy crit, it's like a good payout. So payment's definitely second thing. And then third thing, I think is just, overall response time. And I think this kind of plays in with the first one a little bit, because if you don't understand their team well, then, you wouldn't know their response time. But if it takes like a month to be paid, then like, I feel like your brain doesn't really work in the sense of like, I found the bug, I got paid. Like, you're not going to connect the dot. Like, it doesn't like motivate you that well. You're going to get an email like 3 months later and be like, okay, that's really cool, but I forgot about that program a long time ago. So those are the three things for me.
So you kind of lose the reward motivation if that doesn't happen in the short term. That happens. Yeah, makes sense.
Momentum is important, man. Yeah, you gotta build that momentum so you can keep going. Justin, what about you? What are the three things you look at when it comes to selecting a bug bounty program?
Yeah, so Sam kind of hit the nail on the head. I think in the beginning, there are some different factors, but mostly for the more mature bounty hunters, people that are doing this full time or have been doing it for a while, a lot of responsiveness really gets to be huge, because if you're, like Sam said, if you're trying to do this as your primary source of income, or if you want to keep focused on a program and engaged on a program, then you do kind of need that back and forth from the team. So I particularly love it when a team reaches out to me on Slack or on Twitter or something like that, and will engage with me in a more real time and a more personal way. So that really like draws me to those programs. So responsiveness is a big one. Another one that Sam mentioned is bounties. That is obviously a big one. You want to try to find ones where the crits are, for me, it's kind of above 5K on the crits would be an enticing program. As you start getting into 10K, 15K, that's when you're really like, okay, this is really worth looking into. And then another factor that I kind of have, which is kind of an interesting one, is I like to see programs with mediums above 700. So 750, something that pays like pretty well for mediums really helps kind of fill in the gaps for full-time bug bounty hunters, because, crits take time normally. And there are a couple of times that they'll just kind of fall out of the sky and you can, say thanks for that, sort of deal. But a lot of the times when you're learning a target in the beginning, you're going to be finding a lot of lows and mediums and stuff like that. And, so that really kind of does help fill in the gaps for me. And then the last one I'd say is scope. So I've actually done both wide and narrow scope things. I was a big Recon guy for a long time, and I competed in the subdomain takeover space and, did asset monitoring and that sort of thing. And more recently, and a couple of years ago as well, I'm also just more focusing on like really hardened, single applications, and Instacart is a great example of that. They've got a really fleshed out application with a lot of different pieces and a lot of pieces of functionality that can be vulnerable to different kinds of attacks. So scope can really be either. You can have really wide scopes or you can have really, really narrow scopes. But I don't like seeing something that doesn't have a lot of features that I can access. It has to have features that I can access. That's the biggest thing.
You, Justin, you mentioned scope as a big part of it. You said I know you're a Recon, you were big on Recon, but now you've kind of also focused on single apps. Sam, what about you? Because this is something we're going to ask you guys both eventually, but since we're talking on the scope topic, what about you? Do you prefer anything, or just whatever you can get your hands on?
I love like actual functionality. I know a couple guys who are, Justin Reinhardt and a couple of these guys who are just like insane at Recon. And a lot of times, like I find it better just to kind of collaborate with people versus like trying to figure it all myself. I think maybe in like 2018 or 2019, I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and build my Recon platform, and I'm going to be like really good at Recon. But then I just see like, today's new, and all these people who are absolutely crushing it. And it's like, I can't keep up with those guys, so I'm just going to keep doing what I do best. And I think that's just like focusing on core applications. If there's like a multi-tenant, like add a custom subdomain, like, add different users and like custom SSO or something, I think functionality like that is where I really shine. So like I try to just be as best as I can about like, where things are, what functionality there is, and kind of just like dig deep into that stuff. So I'm not really the best Recon person, but I have a lot of respect for people who do Recon stuff.
Cool.
You mentioned a bunch of bounty tables and rewards and things like that. I'm curious to know, do you ever hack on a bounty program because it's maybe a big brand or a big name and you want that reputation in your profile? Does that plays any role in the programs you choose? Let's start with Justin this time.
Let's say there's no bounty or bounty involved. Like, let's say
So
yeah.
Yeah, so I would say if there's no bounty involved, I think that's a kind of a stretch. The only exception that I would say to that would be if it's a nonprofit sort of situation. Definitely, Ben, you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit. I'm all about trying to help nonprofit organizations and companies that are trying to help people kind of shore up their attack surface. But if it's just like a big name brand, especially if that big name brand isn't offering bounties, that just kind of feels bad. Because they have the money to, they're just not offering it. So at that point, I feel like that's sort of degrading our the worth of our product as hackers. So I try to stay away from those sort of programs. But I definitely am attracted to some programs because of their brand, as long as the bounties are still there. So yeah, that's something like Starbucks is a great example of that.
What about you, Sam?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, I definitely do fall for the trap of like, if there's I mentioned crypto.com, right? And it's like, I really like the idea of like, being able to like hack on certain programs that are, everybody uses. I remember, like, it's funny seeing people use Yahoo Mail knowing like, oh, I hacked Calendar, I hacked that, I hacked that, I hacked that. Like, it's definitely like a fun thing to do, like challenge yourself with. And I definitely agree with like nonprofits. There are a lot of like, there's been like a lot of interesting programs where it's like, yeah, we don't pay bounties, but yeah, for the, you should probably do it without reward. I was gonna say like, trying to remember particularly, it's on a different bug bounty platform, but Red Bull. I think everybody hacked on Red Bull for a little bit, but my whole opinion on like the Red Bull thing, where it's like, hey, you're hacking for like 10 cases of Red Bull, and maybe that's like less than normal programs, but my opinion was basically that people are going to hack on it once and then they're going to become uninterested. And I feel like for the bounty community as a whole, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think that's kind of what happened with it. So I don't think they're good incentives for like, it's like, okay, you get like a cool hoodie, but like it doesn't really encourage long-term hacking. So I think money is really like the best motivator for people, for programs.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree with that. And there's a lot of, different opinions. But yeah, it's very interesting. I think from being part of the community, we need to work on getting the work rewarded properly instead of just being rewarded by swag or not any reward. So that's definitely a personal opinion, but interesting to hear your thoughts.
How do you guys you guys have access to a lot of programs? I feel like do you prioritize them in any way? Like, how do you decide what you want to hack on? And you have a bunch of private programs, a bunch of public programs, right? Like, it's got to be a lot of options to figure out what you want to hack on. How do you prioritize them? Let's start off with you, Sam.
Yeah, honestly, kind of it's kind of hard to explain, but just kind of what I'm interested in. I think honestly, like hacking is a really good way to like kind of get to know an industry and kind of get to know a lot more about like certain, like different communities of people. So for instance, right, like there's like the whole GameStop investing shenanigans like a year ago, the GME stuff. But that got me interested in like a lot of like stock trading and like financial platforms. So I don't know. I don't really see it as a difference between like public and private. I see it kind of as a difference of like, what do I want to invest my time in to get to know, like explore a website, explore the functionality. And, it was definitely fun, like trying to find, it's like, oh, if there's like a bug on Robinhood or something where like you could, there's a Coinbase report actually recently about this, but there's basically a vulnerability where they were able to create these like massive buy and sell orders. And I'm like, wow, like that's just like, the implications of that are so absurd that it's just like very fun and very interesting to try to imagine that and try to go about it in your own way to try to find like vulnerabilities. So that's just kind of my approach to the whole like private public sort of. I just don't really see it that way, but just my take.
How about you, Justin?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, at this point, there's a lot of, we've got like a pretty steady flow of invitations coming in, and we've got access to a lot of different programs. So a lot of times for me, it's kind of snapping up the opportunities that come, from the variety of programs. So any new programs that are starting, any challenges that are happening, any companies that are offering a very specific, promotion on scope and that sort of thing is kind of the stuff I like to jump on. Besides that, I've got a couple programs that I'm loyal to that I'll continue to go back to just kind of as they push new features. And I will say, there's a lot of competition in the automation space. But I kind of have been working on something that I'll share with the community at some point. But this is actually more of a concept around authenticated automation. And monitoring code as it's being pushed that affects authenticated attack surfaces. And that's something that I think is really cool and something that I've been having some success with lately. So more to come on that front.
Can I take a stab at just diffing JavaScript files of some sort after you authenticate? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that piece, and then but there's a bunch of different configurations that come to it too, because like sometimes companies stick their JavaScript files behind authentication, right?
Yep.
And it's like, why would you do that? I don't know, but you got to figure out ways around that.
That's one of the things I have to always give Zayed props for is he was very good at doing that kind of stuff. And this is what made us very successful at Airbnb. He was diffing them on a daily basis. And for people that are watching this and want to understand what this means, is you're pretty much monitoring JavaScript files that are pushed into the code, into the website, and you pull them and you look for functionality. You push them, you pull them every day. You configure, you look at the difference between the two from the day before, the time before you pulled it. And a lot of times you will see that things that are getting released that's not visible to you could be accessible, which is a great way to monitor assets. There's other ways to do that. There's different ways of doing it, and obviously being authenticated is a big part of it. So it's very, very cool.
Yeah, you mentioned.
So-
sorry, not to cut in.
Go
with you
ahead.
earlier. I was gonna say you mentioned Zayat. Yeah, it's really funny. I remember we would like sit in Discord calls, and he'd have like the JavaScript pulled up in Notepad++. He's like showing the like wires connecting for like a potential XSS, and I think like it's just super interesting to watch people who do that well. And I think everybody was kind of inspired by like Franz Rosen. He did like a lot of really good talks on like JavaScript stuff, and yeah, Zayat is 100% a wizard at that. So I just wanted to add, but
Yeah, I agree.
That's great. So let's say that the programs you are hacking have only a single app in scope, and you are hacking that. So what's your first step at that? Like we were talking about Recon. We'll probably cover that a little bit deeper, but interested about hearing about the single app scopes. What are your normal first steps? Let's start with Sam.
yeah, so I think the first steps is like just identifying all attack surface and all functionality. So if it's a single app, like one thing I like to focus on initially is like login and registration. So for instance, checking things like, hey, if I change the host header and the password reset, can I get a reset, email that has a different host? Trying to like really dig deep on all the functionality. So it's kind of hard to say like generally, because like a lot of apps are different, right? So if it's a single web app where it's like, let's say, I don't know, the functionality is like a website builder, right? Like that is very deep. Like there's a lot of really, really interesting stuff you can check for. But if it's something like smaller, if it's something like very, where it's like maybe 3 pages where you can like do some functionality, I like to try to dig deep at like understanding like, okay, what exactly is the stack here? Are there any third parties it loads resources from? Like, is there any sort of like, I guess like architecture issues like HP request smuggling and stuff like that. So overall, just like kind of trying to dig deeper. But if it's a website, there's a lot of stuff to play with. So hey,
That's great to hear, and also, gives me the understanding of every perspective is very, very different. I will have to just say like, oh, I will create an account and we'll start checking IDORs and access control permission, and you are just naming a lot of different things. What about you, Justin?
Yeah. So the very first step for me is just like, I don't even put on my hacker hat. I do put burp. I do turn burp on so that I've got access to burp search history, but I literally just try to use the app as a user and try to understand all the different pieces of the functionality. And like so many people skip that step, and it's pivotal. It really is pivotal, because you can't just log into an app and start trying to hack it. Like, you've got to understand what pieces of information are important to the app, what is the goal of the app, that sort of thing. So that was something that I skipped for a really long time, and I just started doing, a couple of years ago, 2-3 years into my hacking experience, and it really made a really big difference in my methodology. So definitely use the app first.
I think
And-
sorry,
Go ahead.
I think it's really important to touch on what Justin just said, to understand what an application does, especially if you're looking for more like information disclosures, IDORs, logic vulns, right? What is the app supposed to leak? What is it not supposed to leak? What is it supposed to do? What is it not supposed to do? I think those are really important things that you find out once you actually set up the time to use the application. And kind of do that approach. I think there's different ways of doing it. It just comes down to what kind of vulnerabilities you look for. And I think the vuln types you go after kind of changes your approach to how you go after a bug bounty program.
I was just saying that, or thinking that, the business logic is so important to actually understand that, to show impact, right? In some applications, when you're hacking, if you just look for the cross-site scripting, you're missing a bunch of different things, right? Especially when you have credentials, right? You're understanding the logic, you're understanding the permission controls and things like that, and it's very interesting to look. And I was going to ask a follow-up. Do you normally use any burp extensions or plugins to help you with the, maybe authorization controls? I know Authorize, Auto Repeater, there are a couple of those. Do you normally use those? Because when you're navigating the app and already checking the functionalities, you are automatically, in some aspect, doing some sort of testing, right? Oh, you're muted, Justin, if you want to add something.
To me, yeah, no, I wasn't sure where that was going, but yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
No, there are a lot of burp extensions that I use. Like you mentioned, Autorize is really cool. Auto Repeater is really cool. Yeah, those are really great, and they take some time to get set up. But there's a video that I think Fisher put out a while back on YouTube. Stoke, yeah. I mean, that I remember. I was actually there when they were recording that. In I think they were in London, and
London.
and I was just kind of looking over their shoulder as they were doing it, and I was like, that is amazing. And so definitely something I use when I'm testing a lot of access controls, or when a application has a lot of different roles. But besides that, Collaborator is just a gem. And I've messed around a little bit with making some custom extensions. So if there are any people that know Java, and it's not actually too bad. So if you have any propensity for that, I would say take a deep dive, go spend a couple hours and learn how to write your own, because you can really integrate some nice stuff if you've got your own sort of setup.
It's very cool.
Sam, what about you? Do you use any?
I've been using Param Miner a lot. I love Param Miner. Yeah. I'm not sure. It's some wizardry, right? So I think it does like bulk param checking, where it does like 100 parameters and then like singles in on the one. So like I mentioned this because like before I started using it, like I avoided it because I'm like, okay, if it's checking all these parameters, I'm surely gonna get like 429'd or banned from the website for sending so many HTTP requests. But like it helps a lot. Like having like, or finding like hidden headers or hidden parameters can like a lot of times just influence like a lot. So for instance, one that I'll see frequently is like @ format equals, and a lot of times you can do like format equals JSON P or something, and then just like steal response bodies for API calls. And I think it's like one of my favorite ones. Besides that though, kind of the generic ones, like you mentioned, Collaborator. Still use Collaborator, even though Burp Collaborator is banned a lot of places. Still using the default Collaborator server, Besides that, like I've used Autorize in the past, but honestly, like I like to do that more manually. So I'll kind of just like do the 2 sessions, like normal window, incognito window, and like try to change IDs. There's a lot of really great plugins. I was gonna mention, I remember when they were recording that video as well. I think someone was walking over and like stepping in the camera frame or something, and I remember Stoke trying to like talk to him. But yeah, that was funny.
And I will say we need more of those videos. Those were not not only by Stoke and Fisher. If they want to do more, welcome, and I will watch them. But maybe with you guys, like configuring a tool or setting up an extension or something. Those are extremely useful and very very fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say it'd be super cool. I'm people are still trying to figure this out, but I wish there was some good way to like. I saw one recently where someone basically recorded themselves hacking, and then after they found the bug and it was fixed, they went back and they edited the footage to show how they found the bug. And I'm like, that was really cool, and I really like that format. So I'm curious if people will do more of that, and if they do, I'd love to see it. Yeah,
that'd be very cool. Having a look over someone's shoulder would be always fun. So you guys both talked about how your approach is when it comes down to a single app. You log in, you work on the app, you look at if there's different tenants, if there's different user groups, what the application does and what it's not supposed to do, and that kind of stuff. What about a program with a wildcard, something that's a huge scope? How do you approach that? Sam, you just recently did a huge group thing with Apple, for example. They have thousands of subdomains. You both mentioned Yahoo. Yahoo has thousands of subdomains and domains. But is there an approach of a bug bounty program that just invited to? Do you have an approach where it comes down to approaching wildcard scopes? Let's start off with you, Sam.
Yeah. So initially, all the Recon guys love doing like cert.sh, doing like subdomain brute forcing, trying to identify basically all the different subdomains that could possibly exist. And there's like, it's always changing every day on how people do this. But basically just like getting as many as possible. And from that point forward, doing like a mass scan to find like open ports and like trying to figure out, what exactly is running. And then from that point forward, doing like screenshots and like kind of more, getting more information about each host. And then basically at that point, you kind of have like let's say a list of like 1,000 hosts. You're able to kind of segment them like, okay, this is a duplicate of every other 101. So we can like kind of put this in its own box. And then once you have them kind of prioritize for, this is the core stuff, this is the weird stuff. And then like at that point, it's just like kind of, we'll do like a Google Doc at that point, right? And we'll take notes on each host and like kind of decide what's interesting or what's not interesting. And that's kind of how I approach it.
What about you, Justin?
Yeah, so the whole process that Sam just described is spot on. Essentially, you're using passive DNS sources, you're using SSL certificate scans, all that sort of stuff to get your baseline of assets. And one of the things that I think is really cool, this is sort of I've seen a couple people be really successful with this in the community, is taking those SSL certificate scans and then trying to find the hosts that don't have active domains pointing towards them, because that just seems weird, right? Like that seems either like an asset that's not actively being used, or something that's misconfigured, or maybe it's a host that only has internal DNS within the company, that sort of thing. So going after those. I think there's some red flags that kind of pop up and draw me to a specific host after you've got your baseline, something that looks juicy on the screenshots, weird ports that are open, something that comes up on a quick directory brute force, a short directory brute force. And then, like we kind of mentioned before, at that point, it's kind of looking at the screenshots and trying to figure out where are the actual applications in all of this. And, another thing that I've been doing lately, and some of the other guys like Shubs and Irby Sam and stuff like that have had some really good success with this as well, which is, finding some products that are, littered across all of these companies, and then just going for 0 days on those products. A lot of times you can download the Docker instances and pull out the source code and that sort of thing. And that will allow you to sort of, work on those hosts. So that's kind of my approach when you go big, but it is easy to get overwhelmed. So it's you gotta pick somewhere and you gotta start there and trust that that's the place where you're going to start. So.
Okay, those are really good tips. The internal asset thing is interesting to look at. When you see all these SSL certificates, but you're like, I don't see anything coming back for this. And then finding an IP address or finding a way to access them, or finding an SSRF and that kind of stuff makes it very, very fun to approach those. So I think this was all the questions that we had, but there are some really good follow-up questions from the chat. And chat,
Yeah,
if you're watching this, we want to throw some questions. We're going to actively look for them and add them to our queue.
I will say that this is probably the most active chat in terms of questions we got since Mentorship Monday started. That's a great thing. So we will cover some of those, which are pretty awesome.
I just saw a question that come in the chat that I want to address. I just panically messaged Artie saying, "Wait, don't ask any questions. I gotta start off with this question really quick." And I saw the panic in his face. I'm
I'm
sorry.
like, what the hell is going on?
For everyone that's new in the chat, people that are watching bug, they want to get into bug bounties. They want to learn how to get into bug bounties. I don't want to talk about resources, but what are some programs that you recommend? And I know you guys are both very big on bug bounty and getting paid for your time, but keep in mind, as our new people, I'll keep my recommendation towards the end because I think you guys are both going to give similar answers. But and I'm genuinely curious. I have a web pen test background. I know how to do pen testing. I've done some red teaming, but I've never done bug bounties. I want to get into the whole bug bounty ecosystem and get in there, get my foot in there. What are your recommendations? Justin, let's kick it off with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started with DoD like a lot of people did, and that is a great place to start, and it also has some merit. I think just intrinsically, if you're an American, to just try to help support your country. But I think, to be honest, my recommendation, I can't give one program for everybody. I think what I would recommend is go to a company that that has a bug bounty program, a product that you use. So if you use Uber, go check out Uber. If you use SEMrush, go check out SEMrush. Like start with a program where you don't have to learn the pieces of the company so well. Because I think that's one of the biggest skills in this space as well, is just being able to quickly understand a product. So yeah, that's where I'd start.
Okay. Sam, what about you?
Yeah, there's like a really great story about a hacker. I don't know their name in particular, but the story is basically that they used to be like a full-time Uber driver, and then they were using Uber, and they saw something that wasn't right. So they tried to figure out like what to do with it, and they figured they could report it as a security vulnerability. And I think that's like a great example of like, well, they understood how the Uber app works, and they saw something not supposed to work that way. And they're able to
I know
report
who
it.
you're talking about. It's Kevin Rogue.
Oh yeah, Kevin. God, yeah. Love Kevin. Absolutely love Kevin.
Dude, Kevin, I love Kevin.
That's his origin story.
Yeah.
That's a really good story. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You use product, not supposed to do this, report it. I didn't even know about bug bounties were back then either. Yeah.
There's like another kind of interesting thing I keep saying over and over again is like tons of hackers have stories about like hacking their school, and I'm like, why is that? I'm not saying you should hack your school.
Please don't hack your schools. You did
Don't
not
hack
hear
your
this
school.
here. Sam is not endorsing hacking your school, your college, and none of that. But go on, Sam.
Unless they have a PDP or a bug bounty program.
Stanford, yeah, there's definitely some that do. But I was gonna say, like, the reason I think so many people hack their school is like because it's really you're there every day, like you understand
the product.
Exactly, yeah. Like these are the people you go to school with, or your students. Like, how cool would it be to like like go grab your buddy and be like, hey, I have your login password. Like, not saying okay again, but skip that forward. Like if you use certain apps every day, 100%. The DoD I think makes sense in that regard. As one, it's such a massive scope. There's so much stuff, but like two, the idea that like you're out, like it's literally, if you live in the United States, like it's a kind of interesting thing where it's like, oh, I hacked the Department of Defense, like 100%. But for all the programs, like Justin said, you can't really recommend one for everybody. But DoD is absolutely kind of my suggestion. So
I'm gonna just add my 2 cents of this because I know this question is gonna always come in. I love both of your approaches. Find something you like, something that you're familiar with, and hack on them. I also want to say go after some of these Fortune 50 top Fortune 100 companies that have been around since like the 90s. GM, Ford, Sony. They have tons. DoD is another one actually. Yeah, DoD. They have tons of assets that are still online from the early 2000s. They have tons of different subdomains, and having a scope that's huge allows you to learn multiple skills. So you learn how to do recon, and then once you do recon, you learn how to prioritize assets that are owned by a company. And then once you learn prioritization, you start actually looking for vulnerabilities, and you find out what your strengths are and what you're good at and what bugs you're really good at and that kind of stuff. So those are the ones I recommend. Again, it doesn't have to always be those, but just finding a company that has, a lot of assets, has been around for years and years and years and years is very, very helpful.
Yeah, Ben, could I hop in there real quick
Of
and
course.
say something there? I think
This
a
is
lot
your
of
stream
people.
now, dude. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm taking it back. Let's go. I would say that a lot of people get, when you start with these big scopes though, and I think that's just a gem of advice from Ben there. I will caution you with one thing: with these big companies, you always think you can do more recon, and you really
Yep.
can. And at some point, you gotta just start hacking.
Yep.
I see too many people that want to get into the space that get so bogged down with like creating the best recon tool or like recon environment, when you could start making money right now by just opening up Burp and hacking www.
Yep.
So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Yeah, I like to say make recon simple, stupid is what I want to like. Make it very simple, make it very easy. Start at a stage. If you're new, all you need is a list of assets. You don't need to go and do a million different things. You don't need to monitor. You don't need to do anything. Just pull a list of assets and go after the things that look interesting to you. So I love that advice from you, Justin. Really appreciate it. I think it's very important to notice like recon is just a small part of this. It becomes big as you do more and more and you start doing more assets, more companies, and you want to automate things.
That's great advice. We do have some audience questions that are pretty good. We pick a couple. One question coming from NBR More is, when faced with a new bug bounty program, do you search for just a few vulnerability types or spend a lot of time with a fine-toothed comb to find any type of vuln? Is that clear enough? I will paste it in the chat just in case. But let's start with you, Justin.
Yeah. So with a fine-tooth comb to find any type of
Are you
vuln.
testing every single application or just going for a particular bug that you're
No,
good at?
absolutely. Yeah, and I think for me, I don't really focus as much on specific vulnerability types, and I think that, and I know some people that do that successfully, but those are typically the people that are very like organized and have checklists and have, like there's some people that have that and it works great and good for them. But for me, it's a little bit more of an adversarial mentality. Like I know the limitations of computers and I know the limitations of this web server and in this application. How can I come in here and break this? And I think that really does end up producing some cool bugs that you wouldn't necessarily find if you were saying, all right, XSS check, access controls check. And not to diss checklists. I have a giant checklist that I use when I get overwhelmed. But normally I'm trying to go in with an adversarial mentality rather than looking for a specific type of vuln.
Sam, what about you?
What about you, Sam?
Yeah, completely agree with Justin. I think kind of there's like a lot of things that you'll test for everywhere. For instance, if you ever like look at like an application that was used by like someone doing a bug bounty, testing, like everything has an XSS payload, and that's because there's a potential for XSS like everywhere. But even though that's like one thing someone's testing for, it's exactly what Justin said. They're testing for limitations. They understand that they're not supposed to be able to do that, but at the same time, they're also testing for IDOR, server-side request forgery, lots of like these different little types of vulnerabilities. And I think this question is like I've seen this question before, and I think this question appeals to a lot of people in the terms of, okay, I want to get started, I want to learn a particular vulnerability type, and then I want to use that to like dig into applications. I think that's a fantastic like way to kind of get started. But I think as you develop kind of more and more, there's like these little things that you like kind of Justin said exactly, where it's like you gain the understanding of how the application is supposed to work. Like if you're hacking, like let's say like a link shortener, like you want to hack like tinyURL or Bitly, you understand like, hey, like you're not supposed to be able to overwrite URLs. You're not supposed to, to like do certain behaviors that pertain to that. So like kind of being aware of these things kind of helps you have that like adversarial mindset where it's like, I'm able to do this thing, which is not good. And then therefore you find a bug. So
yeah, for sure. And I think as well, like it's totally fine to have a bread and butter. And I think you should have a bread and butter, right? Like the thing that you are really good at. Sam, I don't know, you've been up to some stuff for the past 2 years, but I remember Sam's bread and butter used to be secondary context stuff. And I learned so much from Sam about like understanding how reverse proxies work and how like what kind of stuff you can do with reverse proxies. And he's got a lot of great material on that on his blog. And I used to, my bread and butter used to be access control vulnerabilities. And so, as long as you aren't just looking for that, then it's totally fine to have those, but definitely, branch out and maybe you'll find your next bread and butter as you're experimenting.
I think it's really important to know what kind of vulnerabilities you're very good at and prioritizing those, because like you guys mentioned, it's your bread and butter. That's how you make most of your money. But I also want to explain the adversary mentality for people watching is, at least correct me again if I'm wrong, Justin, but for me, it's how do I own this organization's infrastructure or access the user's private information the fastest way possible? And finding a way through that is probably it's the most critical thing you can find. You either own the customers or you own the infrastructure, and that could be based on Recon, finding internal, CI tools, finding, pipeline tools, finding, things that are supposed to be internal, finding API vulns, finding IDOs and that kind of stuff. So kind of want to touch on that a little bit for people that are watching and this may not be familiar with it. Do you have more questions? I think we have a few more.
We do have many more. I would like to cover all. We will have to do a 3-hour special, which I am not against, by the way. But I guess it's not in the table. Infinite Logins asks, how much time do you spend on a specific feature before moving on? What about you, Sam?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, but I would say like sometimes I'll spend too much time. Like it really does depend. I think you kind of build the sense over time of like, there's something weird going on here. I feel like I'm either like too good at this or too bad at this, where I'll bug people. So we kind of have like a night where we'll all kind of get together with a group of friends and like hack stuff. But people like kind of bug me because they're like, hey, you've spent too much time doing this, or like you've been focused on this one asset. But like, it's kind of like this weird like spidey sense of like, there's something weird going on here and I want to figure out what. So for instance, like let's say like you find like something that's handling like a URL parameter, like redirect to for like an OAuth flow. A lot of times like I'll spend, to give like a solid answer, right? Like maybe an hour and a half sometimes just trying to do, like can I do multiple parameters? Can I do one parameter? Like what characters can I fuzz for? But other times, if it's like something like cross-site scripting where it's like, can I break out of a script tag or text area or whatever, and then like, write an access payload. Sometimes it'll be like 5 minutes and then move on. So it depends a lot, but you kind of build that over time. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Sam said there. I think you kind of get a spidey sense as you get experience. So in the beginning, I would personally say that you should spend more time than you think you should, because I personally did the opposite of that. I focused on IDORs and I focused on XSS and bugs that are just like, yes, it works or no, it doesn't work, sort of things. And XSS isn't always that way, but you get the point. And I think that stunted my growth a little bit as a hacker. And as I started meeting these guys like Sam and Irby Sam in particular, I just got finished exploiting like this crazy bug that took us both Irby Sam and I 2 days to exploit. It was like the most annoying bug ever, but eventually we got a crit. You just kind of get that sense and you got to go for it. So I would say spend more time than you think you should in the beginning. And then, as you kind of grow, you'll get an idea of, all right, this might not be exploitable.
Yeah.
Do we want to continue with more audience questions?
One more. Yeah, let me, last one. I think you both kind of mentioned live hacking events. What role did that play in the targets you hack on? What kind of experience you get from it? Let's start off with you, Sam.
I think like a really, really important role. When the first live hacking event I went to, I got the chance to stay with Jack Cable. And Jack Cable is just absolute genius, like really, 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 really smart person. And I was lucky enough, I got to kind of watch them hack. So, I'm like pretending to do computer stuff and like looking at their screen, seeing what they're doing. And I think it really shaped, like, it was such a good experience of just being able to like, I don't know, like actualize, like, so I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, right? And like I think there's maybe like 2 hackers in Omaha, Nebraska, right? So like if you want to get into hacking, like it doesn't seem like a real thing. I remember the first conversation I ever had with like someone who did computer stuff was like hacking my school, right? It's like I had my vulnerability that I found in school, and I'm like, look, guys, I found this. Like, is there someone I can talk to? And then like they introduced me to a tech guy, and he didn't even really understand it, and he's like, oh, like it's a bug, we'll fix it. But like going to a live hacking event, you have all these people who are all these like really, really smart people who've, kind of earned their way to be there. And you're able to kind of like, it's like, this really exists. Like, this is actually a space where there's like a ton of people. So I think like it really shapes and like kind of helps you like understand it. That's just kind of my experience with live hacking events. And like, I do think that they play like a really kind of monumental, if you have a chance to go to DEF CON, if you have a chance to go to any sort of conference, like absolutely go. It's a really good time. But
Yeah, absolutely. Super formative for me as a hacker. Just seeing everybody who's there, listening to the show and tells, collaborating with other hackers and seeing how their brain works has just, really been super great for my growth as a hacker. And then, in addition to that, you make connections and you have friends and okay, if I've got a secondary context bug, I'm going to send that to Sam, or if I've got whatever bug, I'm going to send this to, if we've got an XSS, I'm going to send it to file descriptor, right? And you're going to get some crazy responses from that. So yeah, overall, really awesome opportunity. I will say one thing is that, when you make it to these events, you always want to perform well at these events, because it increases your chances of getting invited to the next ones. And that can be really stressful. So it's important to, if you do get the opportunity to realize that, your whole world isn't going to come crumbling down if you don't, rank in the top 10 or something like that. And just to remember that it's a great opportunity, enjoy it for what it is.
Those are good recommendations. I have to say I really miss live hack events, mostly for the people component of that, right? Like meeting our folks and discussing things, and also watching the show and tells and all that. This is pretty awesome. So let's hope we can all meet together again physically in the same place soon.
Hopefully one day. But I think this is all the questions we have. We are going to go to our giveaway, but before we do the giveaways, I want to say a big thank you to Sam and Justin for joining us. Thank you so much for being here. This was amazing. Lots of good nuggets there. Lots of great advice, whether you are a new beginner to bug bounties or someone who's been doing bug bounties and still need a little bit of guidance. Amazing stuff from the both of you. I really appreciate it. And
Awesome.
I'm going to highlight this comment right here for the both of you.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having us on. I appreciate it, guys.
Please don't hack
I have to say that we do have a new co-host if we need it. Very good work. Also love the chat activity, responding comments right there in real time. So amazing performance. Thank you very much, both of you. This was pretty awesome.
Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, thanks
See
for
you
having
next
us.
time. Thank you very much,
Awesome,
folks.
guys. Bye. I'm gonna put you guys into the green room. You're welcome to hang out if you want. As we do our giveaway. All right, this is our last episode. We're going to take a few weeks off, and then Live Recon will continue with a new host. Maybe if Justin comes on and becomes our host, but Ari will be here. We'll be here. Producer in my ear, can we do 5 links? I think we are going to do the first one. I'm going to put the code in the chat, or we're going to put it in the chat right now, and it's going to show up on the screen. All you have to do is enter that code, and we're going to pick the winner.
So it's the code Rampari again. Okay.
I think I may have said the wrong show. I meant Mentorship Monday. If I did say the wrong show name, I apologize. I did not mean to say that.
So make Recon simple. I guess we also need exclamation mark. Am I correct?
I think it works with both. Producer,
Works
does
with
that
both?
work? Can you let us know if it's working and enrolling people? Let me check too. I can open up my laptop. It's working. Okay.
It's working. Awesome. So yeah, no need for the question, the exclamation mark. Sorry. Make Recon simple.
And we're gonna use the same code for the next for all 5 of these giveaways. So we're not gonna do multiple ones. This is good enough. What I'm gonna do is once this is over in the next minute, I'm gonna turn the chat into emotes only, and our producer is going to roll it when I count down to 5, and we'll have our first winner. So give it a few more seconds. Make sure you enter Make Recon Simple. And we're going to turn the chat into emotes only in just a few seconds.
A lot of first-time chatters right there.
Love to see it, dude. Love to see
Participating.
it.
Thank you for joining.
Oh, and I forgot. If you are the winner for our giveaway, what we'll do is I'm going to send you a message myself as a whisper. So check your whispers. And through whispers, you will get a message from us on how to redeem your giveaway. So make sure you look at your whispers. It's your messaging system in on Twitch itself. It's on the top right. It's like a little messaging icon, and you click on that, and you will see your whispers.
Imagine waking up in the morning getting like a whisper from Namsek.
All right. I'm going to count to 5 and turn the chat into emotes. And then 5 seconds after that, we are going to announce our first winner. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to go to emotes only. All right. Producers in the background, are you ready? Let's do our first winner. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we already have a
Right
winner.
there.
Justin, 24. Our first one. Let's do one more.
Yes.
Our next winner is
Tamsak. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Let's do 3 more. Right.
Justin Rhino Raider won with his 24th account. Congrats, Justin. So the one you missed is actually Roxin Baby.
Okay, we have 2 more. Let's do 1 more.
I think we only have 1 more.
And then Incognito Frog.
Frog. Yeah, and he was very active in the chat.
We have 1 more, right? That's the last one.
No, we do have 5 already.
We already have 5.
Or no, we actually have 4. No,
am I bad at counting? Okay, 1 more. Sorry, I thought I was bad at counting. All right, and the last winner is F Society K. All right.
F Society. Mr. Robot. Right
Mr.
there.
Robot. I think there's I think it's not just F Society, but the K there. It's a little, it's a little game in the middle.
We can ignore the K.
Yeah, we can ignore the K. All right, that's it. So if you were a winner, you are going to get a whisper from one of us, either me or the HackerOne page or one of our moderators. Other than that, this was amazing. Thank you again for an amazing Mentorship Monday season. This is season 2. All of the videos are going to eventually be available on Hacker 101 and our YouTube channel. And we're going to take a few weeks off, and we'll return with. I dropped my pen. But we'll return with Mentorship Mondays in a few weeks. Ari, do you have anything else you would like to add, my friend?
I don't think so. Just wanted to thank you, everyone, for being so active in the chat, making some amazing questions, and also for joining here. It was an amazing session. And just the usual reminders. Don't forget to click on the follow button so you get the notifications for the next time. We'll get back. So,
And before I say goodbye, can I just get a big Grandpa Ari chain in the chat for one last time? There's 180 of you watching right now. Can I get a Grandpa Ari from everybody in the chat?
180 Grandpa Aris.
Just spam Grandpa Ari in the chat. And I want to say thank you guys again. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for being here. This is amazing. And we can't wait to do our next season soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.